The history and culture of the Mandalorians is one of the most fascinating aspects of the Star Wars universe, and the saga's Mandalorian characters are among the most iconic in all of science fiction. But just what makes them so special? This is the untold truth of the Mandalorians. Mandalorians originate from the Outer Rim planet of Mandalore. The planet's citizens are divided into houses and clans that have often been at war with one another, despite sharing a common creed and code. But a person doesn't have to be born a Mandalore to be a Mandalorian, since they often recruit orphans from other worlds and teach them their way of life, including their culture, creed, and code. The Mandalorian in the Disney Plus series was a foundling, having been adopted into the culture when he was young, a history that led him to take pity on the alien child he had been tasked to retrieve in the show's early episodes. And although Mando is human, Mandalorians can be any type of species. What ties them together is their spoken language and their strict code. Realistically, virtually anyone or thing can become part of the culture, as long as they're willing to learn the way of the Mandalorian.
Reserve some for the Foundlings.
As it should always be. The Foundlings are the future. This is the way.
Before the live-action series, Boba Fett was the most recognizable Mandalorian in Star Wars, even though he isn't actually a Mandalorian at all. As Attack of the Clones makes clear, he is actually a clone of the bounty hunter Jango Fett. While Jango taught Boba the ways of the Mandalorian, he didn't grow up surrounded by the Mandalorian culture. It might sound complicated, but Mandalorian director Dave Filoni and showrunner Jon Favreau cleared things up in an interview with EW. Favreau said, "Our guy is a Mandalorian, and we definitely explore the culture of the Mandalorian." While Filoni added, "Boba Fett is not Mandalorian, not born on Mandalore. He's more of a person indoctrinated into it, into the way of life, and gets a hold of the armor. Boba Fett is also a straight-up villain, being a bounty hunter who's in it for his own personal gain. And while Mando is certainly capable of lethal violence, it's clear the direction of his moral compass is rather more complex." It's mentioned in The Mandalorian that Mandalorians aren't as common as they used to be, and that's a real understatement. However, while the Empire wiped out most of the Mandalorians in an event known as the Great Purge, in their heyday, the Mandalorians were some of the most feared warriors in the universe. They worked as bounty hunters and mercenaries and were ruled over by leaders who held the title of Mandalore. Their violent tendencies quickly drove them to conquer other worlds, including Concord Dawn, Jango Fett's supposed homeworld. Eventually, the Mandalorians' warlike ways attracted the attention of the Jedi, and the wars that ensued between the two went on for centuries. They came at a great cost too. In the final battle between the Jedi and the Mandalorians, a cataclysmic event transformed the surface of Mandalore into an inhospitable desert, forcing the Mandalorians to abandon war and focus on rebuilding. Eventually, the Mandalorians reconstructed their cities under sealed domes, which powered citizens from Mandalore's harsh environment. A civil war followed, during which Mandalore's warrior class waged battle against the new Mandalorians, who advocated for peace. Ultimately, the new Mandalorians won, transforming Mandalore into a pacifist society. Satine Kryze took over as the Duchess of Mandalore, and the more militant factions were exiled to Concordia, one of Mandalore's moons. During the Clone Wars, the pacifist Duchess Satine Kryze became the target of assassination attempts because of her beliefs. Obi-Wan Kenobi and the other Jedi dropped their differences with the Mandalorians and came to the aid of Kryze, but their efforts fell short against the Death Watch, a terrorist group led by the Concordian governor, Tarre Vizsla. Vizsla, who wanted to revive Mandalore's militaristic culture, teamed up with Darth Sidious's former apprentice, Maul, to take over the planet. Kryze was overthrown, and when the dust settled, Maul sat on the throne. But Maul's reign didn't last long. On the eve of Order 66 and a destruction of the Jedi Order, the former Padawan Ahsoka Tano and an army of clones traveled to Mandalore to stop Maul and free the planet. The ensuing battle, known as the Siege of Mandalore, saw Maul's regime come to an end, and inadvertently paved the way for the Imperial occupation of the planet. As with all great empires, the Mandalorians live by a kind of pyramid structure, with the most elite warriors at the top and the least powerful at the bottom. On top of the pyramid sits the Mandalore, the leader of the Mandalorian people, who is guarded by the Protectors, upper echelon Mandalorian warriors who help to maintain balance and peace among the people. Under the Protectors are the Houses, which are made up of various clans who vied for power over many centuries. While these wars helped to make the Mandalorians some of the strongest fighters, infighting was also one of the reasons the Mandalorian Empire fell from grace. Their lands were ruined, the body count stacked up, and the Mandalorians gradually weakened over time. Nevertheless, there's no arguing with the culture this fighting produced. The warriors that continue the Mandalorian tradition remain as formidable as any others, and tend to be virtually unbeatable in one-to-one combat. Most Mandalorians speak Basic, the universal dialect that links the Star Wars universe together. But they do actually have their own language too. It's called Mando'a. And while it's not quite as rich as some of the other fantasy languages out there, it's much more fully developed than you probably realized. Mando'a first appeared in Attack of the Clones, albeit only in written form, and went on to pop up in both Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, being spoken out loud in the Rebels episode Legacy of Mandalore.
Sukui Alit Ren. Ibiki Sabine Ren, Aranovar, Gadetje Mevartigar.
However, the language first started to take shape in the video game Star Wars Republic Commando, which features an old Mandalorian war chant called Vode An, which translates to Brothers All. From there, author Karen Travis picked up the reins. Her novel Republic Commando Hard Contact includes an extensive Mando'a glossary, as well as grammatical factoids, like the idea that Mando'a is only spoken in the present tense, since Mandalorians believe in what they call a living history. Unfortunately, Hard Contact is no longer canon, and Travis has even removed all of the supplemental information about Mando'a from her website. Still, a handful of Mando'a words can be found in Fantasy Flight Games' tabletop RPG supplement, Collapse of the Republic, as well as some other tie-in materials, including the official Star Wars Galaxy's Edge cookbook. The famous Mandalorian armor might give them their iconic look, but it serves a far greater purpose than just looking flash. Made out of a rare substance called Beskar, Mandalorian armor is strong enough to repel a lightsaber, and can easily withstand a blaster shot. In fact, it's one of the strongest alloys in the galaxy. The insignia on each set of armor also reflects clan affiliation and pays tribute to the fallen warriors of the past. But Beskar isn't impervious to any attack. In fact, during the Imperial era, the Mandalorians developed a weapon called the Arc Pulse Generator, which was capable of burning Mandalorians to a crisp inside their own armor. Nicknamed the Duchess, the Arc Pulse Generator was later used by the Empire against the Mandalorians themselves. The Mandalorian armor's ability to withstand a lightsaber has come in handy on more than one occasion. This is because while Obi-Wan Kenobi and other Jedi stepped in to help save crisis Mandalorians during the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians and Jedi were once fierce enemies. And sure, they lacked the ability to use the Force or obliterate their enemies with lightsabers, but the strongest Mandalorian warriors could easily go toe-to-toe with Jedi Knights. These differences didn't last forever though. Jedi tend to be reasonable, and they prefer to take the high road and make decisions that aid the greater good. And despite being masters of combat, the Jedi Code does call for peace above all else. When the Clone Wars roll around, there's no longer quite as much hostility between the two cultures, and by the time of the Galactic Empire, the wars of the Jedi and the Mandalorian are pretty much ancient history. Of course, Beskar Steel isn't the only weapon the Mandalorians developed to bring down their Jedi opponents. In fact, many of the weapons associated with Mandalorians were developed specifically to fight their Force-powered foes, while the Mandalorians' unique fighting style evolved during their many clashes with the Jedi. As Dave Filoni explains, their weapons, their arsenal, their technology had a massive increase once they collided with the Jedi and found these Force-wielding people that had abilities they didn't understand. Filoni didn't just make that up either. Referring to the legendary Star Wars concept artist who created Boba Fett's look, Filoni says, "I've always believed that, because that seems to be something that would be in the DNA of the Joe Johnston designs of them as super commandos." At any rate, the Mandalorians' efforts seem to have paid off. Obi-Wan Kenobi has enough trouble standing his ground against Jango Fett on Kamino, or dealing with the Death Watch in the Clone Wars. Taking on an army of Mandalorians in their prime can't have been an easy task, even for the Jedi. It's hard to imagine the Mandalorians and Jedi ever joining up together, especially considering their troubled past. And given their rigid differences, it's even harder to fathom the idea of Mandalorian Jedi. But there's always an exception to every rule. Tarre Vizsla was the first Mandalorian to be inducted into the Jedi Order. While he joined the Jedi Order at a young age, he eventually became the Mandalore of his planet, a fitting role for someone of his capabilities. Of course, every fearsome warrior in the Star Wars universe deserves a distinctive weapon, and Vizsla was no different. Hoping to bring together the best aspects of his two cultures, Vizsla built his own version of a lightsaber, dubbed the Darksaber. A weapon like that may have flown in the face of everything the Jedi stand for, but it was perfect for Vizsla himself, and ended up becoming a legendary artifact of the Mandalorian people. The Darksaber soon became the symbol of House Vizsla. After Vizsla's passing, the Darksaber was kept in the Jedi Temple, and eventually, the members of House Vizsla took the black-bladed saber back to their homeworld and used it to unite the people of Mandalore. The Darksaber was passed down from generation to generation, and it eventually made its way into the hands of Darth Maul. After that, the Darksaber somehow came into the possession of the Imperial Moff Gideon, who's seen wielding the legendary weapon during the Mandalorian Season 1 finale. Pairing Mando with Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian might have proven to be an act of genius for the show's producers, but there's a very real reason why Mando in particular has a soft spot for Baby Yoda.
Stop touching things.
This is because the Mandalorians often take care of orphans and induct them into their culture, and of course, Mando himself became an orphan when his parents were killed. Since history tends to repeat itself, Mando rescued Baby Yoda, who's presumably an orphan himself. It doesn't hurt that Mando has seen Baby Yoda's Force capabilities firsthand, as Mandalorians are particularly prone to taking in orphans who show the power and the willingness to fight, which could be part of the reason why Mando goes back for Baby Yoda in Chapter 3. So under the code of the Mandalorians, Baby Yoda is now Mando's foundling. Just what that really means for either character, however, is yet to be seen. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.